In this video, I would like to show you how to work with a drop-down list. And we are working with a traditional drop-down list. You can make this multiple, and the same principles would apply as would apply to a group of checkboxes. Okay, so here we have the opening select tag and the closing select. Every choice is an option. The name is set for the select and the values. So this will only return one value with this for this element. Notice the value is set to nothing. Nothing in PHP means it is empty. It makes it easy for us to determine if the user has selected something by using the empty function as our test. By default, this first option is always selected. Therefore, you should always have an empty value in it, have it say please select one or something to that nature. Never have it make a valid choice because it will skew your results. You won't be able to determine if the user did indeed check something. So here I have my drop down. And if I were to click send data and nothing is checked, here I have my message, please select a city. Once I go back and check something, now it shows me El Cajon as my choice. Notice when you are using a postback, and this is called a postback, we are posting back to itself. The values do not remain or persist in the fields, and that's okay. However, there might be times when you need to carry the values from one page to another, as you might see in an order form. And so I will show you later on how to put those values back into the form element. So let's take a look at the basic concepts of validating this drop-down list. At the top of the document, here's my PHP, and I am setting up my variables for my break and my carriage returns. However, I'm not using them till later on. Escape characters always need to be enclosed in double quotes. I do not want this code to be executed unless the user has clicked the submit button. PHP is going to read from the top down, and we only want this code read if indeed it was submitted from the form. So this is one way of doing it. You also could test for the existence of a name-value pair, such as a submit button or a hidden field, using the isSet function. Here we have a very simple if-else. So if not empty, $post. All right, so if it is not empty, then we are just echoing back the value for this name field. Else, we're going to give the user an error message. So this $_post, this is an associative array which collects all the name value pairs being sent, and we can extract the value by passing the name of the form element to this array. This is an associative array. An associative array means we have name value pairs, or you will hear the term key value pairs. In a traditional array, the values are index based, 0, 1, 2, 3. We do not use that. We retrieve a value by using a name or a key, which is text. Let's take a look at our second example. When I click send data, here again, please select a city. And once I have made a choice, it echoes back. Now we're getting a little bit more information. We're just not echoing back the value from the HTML form. And this is accomplished using an else if. So here I have my first if. So if, and we're testing the value that is being returned. So we have if this expression is the same as this expression. So one of my values was Chula Vista. So if that was the selection, then we would echo back, I see you live in Chula Vista, etc. So we have these else ifs. And by the way, in PHP, an else if can be 2 words or 1 word. I like it to be 2 words. It just looks better and more familiar in my opinion. Our final default else, which you should always have, if none of the above return true, then we will select our final one by default. So the way an else if works, if the condition is true, the code inside the curly braces will execute. At that point, once a match is made, at the first time it returns true, it exits out of the procedure. So you always want to make sure that you can retrieve every clause. So if I look at the view source here, notice we're up here in the head section, which is not syntactically correct. It's fine for testing and learning. Let's take a look at the next one. If I click send data, all right, now we have the same thing. Please select a city. And now if I make a choice, I have a nice message. The difference between this example and the previous example is that in this example I am using a switch. A switch is a very nice replacement for a multiple if. Sometimes too many if-else get confusing and hard to read through. So here's the switch. And what we're doing is we're looking for a match. We're comparing this expression to the different cases. So here's my first case, which is Chula Vista. So in the event that the user had selected Chula Vista, the code following the colon would be executed. Here again, this is a statement, so it ends in a semicolon. Then we have a break. Here again, the first time it finds a match or returns true, if this case is true, then we execute the code following the colon. After the first true, it exits out of the switch. So for every choice that we're looking for, we will have a case. Just like the final else, you also have a final default. So if none of the above are true, then we have our final default, which means I guess they didn't select anything, and we're giving them this error message here. Let's take a look at our next. Here, when I click, we are writing inside the body. And notice, as I said before, we lose the value. And we'll look at that in the last example. Let's take a look at where this message is being displayed. This is where I'm displaying this message. And here again, I could have written this longwise, and actually it will save some space. Because this is HTML, the carriage returns do show up in the view source. I am building a message in this variable $MSG. Because PHP will read this before I hit the submit button, so this variable needs to be initialized. So whenever you have variables, they always need to be initialized, and I suggest initializing them to nothing, empty, or else you're going to get an error message. So here we have my variable, and here are my escape characters. I added an extra one. This is my tab. And I'm using the switch. So nothing has changed other than how we're writing. Because we can only make one choice, $message equals. I do not need to concatenate anything. It is only possible to retrieve one value for this element. So what I'm doing is I'm overwriting the initialization of this variable, which was set to nothing. However, I am also concatenating some characters. Because we are writing in the web page, we want it to look nice. This is a line break, and we're going to tab over. Then we have a BR element, and then we're going to have a line break. So everything is the same except that I'm using a variable and now some formatting characters. So let's take a look at how this looks. We've already chosen Escondido. So if I look at the source code and I scroll down, look how nicely that came out. Look how nice. The reason the break is there is because it gets too close to choose a city in the browser. But notice I had to tab over because everything else is tabbed over. So here we see our output. In the last file, notice when I have chosen San Diego, not only do I have my message, but I also have the choice back in here. How you make a select box an option selected by default is the one-word HTML attribute selected. And if we were to look at the source code here, notice there it is. That was generated by PHP. So let's take a look at how we did that. Inside my option, here's my opening option tag, I am inserting a line of PHP code. You can see my opening and closing PHP delimiters. And here I have an if. And I'm writing it across because if I wrote it down, it would give me carriage returns in the view source. And this way it looks nicer. So if this expression is Chula Vista, then I'm going to echo selected. So I have this PHP code inside every option element, and depending on which one is selected, it will say selected, and therefore it will show up in our drop-down list. So when you're posting data back to the same file, it does tend to lose the information when it sends it, and this is one way to keep it there.